Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for our workshop on identifying problems and people. For those who don't know me, my name is Blake Sims St. Louis. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm the Program Director of Social Innovation for Innovate at BU. We are thrilled to have you join us tonight, and also in the house is my wonderful project manager, Alessandra, who's been chatting with a number of you and is really helping facilitate and lead the challenge. I'm going to do a short presentation right now. We are recording, and all of the materials you're going to see are in a shared folder that's posted on our website and will be included in the follow-up email. Also, if you'd like to see any of the screens full screen, just click on the 4 little white arrows in the top corner and you can see it in full view. So at this time, I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through some of tonight's slides. All right, here we go. I'm going to go into presentation mode here. So again, this is part of the Community Impact Challenge Wellbeing. It's a competition we're running through the month of October. Deadline is November 1st. And this is a challenge that's open to all BU students who are interested in developing ideas that foster well-being on our campus. Here you can see our website where all of this information and resources are kept. Tonight, we've been doing some general student networking, and now we're going to transition to the hands-on workshops. So how this is going to happen is there's a couple of topics that we're going to talk about. I'll do a mini presentation, maybe 5-6 minutes of an overview of a topic, and then we'll leave the presentation mode and give you time to connect with one another at the networking tables to think about how that topic, how that information applies to the idea you're working on. And we'll go back and forth like that a few times throughout the evening. And then really the bulk of the event is meant for you to workshop your ideas and connect with other Terriers at our event. If you're new to REMO, you might want to update your profile. To do that, you simply go into the upper right-hand corner of the dashboard and you can see ways to update that profile. Alessandra also has already shared the REMO guide in the chat box, and that has these directions on it as well. So that's one way to update your profile. If you're new to the platform, really it's a pretty simple platform to use. All you have to do is double click on a table that you want to move to. You can see the avatars of other people who are also in the event. And when you're at a table with people, you can have your camera and your mic on to do kind of a mini Zoom conversation. You can also share your screen, or there's a whiteboard option as well if you want to experiment with that. The Community Impact Wellbeing Challenge is organized with some amazing campus partners. So this challenge, we're working closely with the BU Undergraduate Student Government, BU Umoja, our Black Student Union, and the Wellbeing Project. Some of the goals of the challenge include helping you meet and collaborate with peers from across the university, helping you develop ideas that support communities at BU and beyond, and to help you develop innovation skills and an entrepreneurial mindset. The focus is on the 7 dimensions of well-being. And so the ideas you're working on should address at least one of these, if not more. So just be aware of the different themes. And we have 2 tracks. So if you're working on an idea that has direct impact on the BU community, on students, faculty, or staff, you would submit your idea to track 1. If you're working on an idea that has broader community impact on however you define community for you, whether it's a different city, a different group outside of BU, you would submit your idea to track 2. All applications are due by midnight on Sunday, November 1st. They'll be reviewed by a panel of BU faculty, staff, students, as well as community experts. The challenge is open to any current BU student, undergrad, graduate, and up to 10 in each track will receive $500 in seed funding. If you want to learn more, in the resource folder that I'm going to share with you, you can see the application questions in advance, as well as the rubric evaluators will be using to score your submissions. And all of those resources are also linked on our website. All right, so at this point, I'm going to transition us into the first round of the hands-on workshop, and the focus is going to be on problems. So the first thing we always ask students to think about are, what problems are you interested in exploring? So what I'd love for you to do is, either on your computer screen, or if you've got some paper or your phone in front of you, I want you to take a second to see if you can write down the problem that you're solving in one sentence. How specific can you get? Can you articulate it clearly? And when we break in just a minute to network, I want you to talk about that sentence and see if you need to refine it. It may make sense to you, but you've probably been thinking about it for a while. And so the value of getting feedback and connecting with other people is to get out of that bubble and to really embrace other perspectives and get feedback on how you articulate the problem. Some questions you should be thinking about as you dig into a problem, and we will put these in the chat box so that you can discuss them at your tables. How do you know it's a problem? Do you have lived experience with this problem? Meaning, have you experienced this yourself? Have your friends? Have the members of your community? And if you don't have lived experience with this problem, who does? And how are you engaging them in this process as you better understand the problem? This comes back to research. BU, after all, is a research institution, and developing innovative ideas is no exception to that. So you should be researching your problem using primary and secondary sources, directly talking with people who have this problem or who you think have this problem, as well as doing research online or through any of our BU library resources to help you really understand the layers of this problem. And while you're doing that work, be very reflective, especially if you don't have the lived experience with this problem. Really think about, do I have personal biases or assumptions that I'm bringing to this work? And how do I address those? How do I validate that this is really a problem? And usually that happens through conversations with people. So these would be items that I would encourage you to think about, discuss with people at your table, and continue to work on as you move your ideas forward. One helpful tool that I often teach students is the 5 whys. So in this situation, what you do is, at the top of your paper, you'd write that one sentence problem description. And then you ask yourself over and over and over again, why is this a problem? And every time you can answer that question, you put your answer below it. And then you ask yourself, why again? And you can see how many layers and how deep you can dig into this problem. By the end, what you'll realize is the problem statement you wrote is more like the tip of an iceberg. And there's so much more to this problem that might be under the surface that you're not exploring. And so those are really ripe areas for you to continue to do research and validate through primary and secondary sources. All right, so at this time, I'm going to end this round of the presentations. Again, I'm going to encourage you to connect with people at tables, whether there's 2 of you, 3 of you. We've got a small enough group tonight that everybody should have time to workshop this. I'm going to set a timer for about 15 minutes for you to have these conversations. So what I'd love for you to do again is make sure you've written your problem statement in one sentence if possible, and then we're going to share those questions that'll be helpful for you to discuss with your peers at your tables through the chat box. And we'll reconnect in about 15 minutes. Have fun. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you've been having really productive conversations with one another, digging into some of the problems and topic areas that you're interested in, and getting really useful feedback that you can continue working on in order to move your ideas forward. I'm going to again share my screen briefly as I wrap up the problem topic and we transition to topic number 2 for tonight. Okay. So we just spent about 15 to 20 minutes meeting with one another and talking about those topics and problems. My advice, as I emphasized before, is research, research, research. Do as much as you can to connect directly with people with lived experience. to learn about them through interviews and conversations, to connect with resources across the campus, other people who are working on this problem. And one helpful tool that I'd like to just show you briefly is called the Impact Gaps Canvas. I mentioned our resource folder before, and a PDF copy of this tool is located in that folder, so we'll make sure you all have access to that. The Impact Gaps Canvas is a really simple resource to help you better map out this topic. And so the orange boxes that you see on your screen are things that I've added, but the actual tool is just basically 3 columns. The first column is where we've got step 1. That's called challenge mapping. That's asking a lot of questions to help you better understand this topic and this problem. And on the actual PDF, you'll see that on the second page of this, there's a whole list of starter questions that might be helpful for you. On the other side of the canvas is solution mapping, and we're going to touch more upon this in the third part of our workshop tonight. But basically, you should know what already exists. What solutions are already out there, and how can you either leverage them, adapt them, adjust them to fit your context. But the idea that there's nobody else that's working on this concept or this problem is probably inaccurate. And so as you're designing and doing your research, you can also be thinking about who else is doing this work. And what that leaves you is the gap, the middle, right? Elements of the problem that don't have existing solutions for them yet. And that's really where ripe, innovative ideas are formed. And so again, the Impact Gaps Canvas is one potential tool for you to use for this challenge or any idea that you're working on to really help you understand the problem. The next part of our workshop is going to transition to focus on the people. So you've maybe got your sentence, you've thought about why is this a problem, and now I really want you to think about who is affected by or connected to this problem. Valuable solutions solve people's problems, and so you need to know as much as you can about the people. We talk about people as stakeholders. These are people that have a stake in this topic or in the solution, and they're often directly affected by the problem, so they're also living experts. But stakeholders may also include others who are working on this problem. So if you do some Googling and you find there are nonprofits in the Boston area also working on this problem, they would be another stakeholder category. At the same time, there may be stakeholders who actually want to keep the status quo, who are currently benefiting from the challenges that people are experiencing. And so they're going to be barriers for you. And so understanding as much about them as possible is important, so you can think about how to either bring them into the conversation or what it's going to take in order to break through that barrier. Anyone who has buy-in is important, so that as you're developing these interventions or solutions, they have a role to play as your idea develops. So what I'm going to recommend you do is we're going to transition to maybe thinking about stakeholder mapping. Here's an example of a mind map that we often work on with students. So you'll see in the center of the map is a bubble that says problem. So you can take that one sentence that you've been working on and discussing and put that in the middle. And then along the outside, you identify the different stakeholder groups, the different groups of people that are affected by or connected to your problem. And you map those out, and then for each of them, you can think about, well, what do I know about this stakeholder group? And if you realize you don't really know much, that would be a really important group to do some of that research and outreach with. All right, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna set another 15-minute timer. You can stay at your table, or you can mix it up and go talk with some other people who are here at the event. If you mix it up, make sure you just share that quick problem statement first, and then talk about all the different people and see if you can develop a robust stakeholder map that will really help you better understand the needs and the people of your solution, which is crucial in order to develop a solution that really, truly provides value. Okay, so I'm going to set that timer for 15 minutes. I hope you enjoy the conversation. And again, these resources and these tools will be available to you after this workshop. So hopefully you'll continue to work on this beyond tonight's event. See you soon. Hi folks, I hope that's been helpful conversation. I just want to do one final review of a tool and some advice on continuing this research. And then we're going to wrap up the final presentation, and you're more than welcome to stick around and continue chatting about your ideas and let us know how to help. So I'm going to share my screen one more time with you. Okay. So I just encouraged you to think about your stakeholder maps and to draft that out. And now, you spend some time talking about it with people. What's next for you? Talk to those stakeholders. Get to know them. Make sure what you've got on that map aren't just assumptions you have, but are actually from those customers, stakeholders, beneficiaries, whatever. Reach out to them and have real conversations with them. Even 15 minutes, you can learn so much by having a couple of open-ended questions to better understand their needs and their connections to the topic that you're investigating. Another helpful tool that I'd highly recommend you take a look at and is in the resource folder is Creative Reaction Lab's Equity-Centered Community Design Field Guide. This is an amazing nonprofit organization based out of St. Louis that's really talking about how to engage community members in this process. And in Wellbeing, where you're developing ideas for the BU community or your community at large, obviously community is a key piece of this process. So what I love about this framework is the involvement of those community members, of understanding the history, of identifying power and privilege and dynamics in a topic and in a problem. And so this is a really great resource. It's a short reading, but it's very focused on helpful strategies for you to move your ideas forward. The last piece of tonight's workshop is actually part of that Impact Gaps canvas I mentioned earlier, knowing what already exists, especially here on the BU campus or in whatever community you plan to work on and work with. What already exists? What can you leverage? What needs to be adapted to the needs of the stakeholders you're working on? And so some questions to think about as you're investigating existing models include, how are others addressing this particular problem in other contexts? What can you learn from them? Can you adapt those existing models to fit the needs of your stakeholders? And the only way to know that is by really understanding who your stakeholders are and what their needs are. You also should be talking with stakeholders about what they already use to address this problem, perhaps. What are their workarounds or what solutions already exist so that you know how you play with those existing solutions, or so you know you're not doubling the efforts of something that's already in use. And all of this, the research, the interviews, understanding existing models, helps lay a foundation for you so that you are using the best of your time and resources in making ideas that matter. And so you're learning through this process, and all of this will set you up for a long-term success as your solution concept develops. So what I'd recommend for next steps for everybody working on the challenge or any kind of idea development is to leverage these tools for you to do research and to continue learning. Once you've gathered a lot of this information, start to sit with it and look for patterns and gaps. Those are where ripe opportunities for innovation really happen. Also, continue connecting with your peers and with experts. So we've got a contact sheet that will be in the follow-up email. We have a Build Lab community Slack channel where you can connect with people. And next week's workshop will bring about a dozen experts to host office hours and tables in a REMO event for you to get feedback from them. They have expertise in all the well-being dimensions. And so I encourage you to join us again next week in order to meet with those folks and get feedback from experts both on campus and in our community. Lastly, before I sign off, I would really appreciate if live attendees could complete this very short feedback survey on tonight's event. Alessandra will put it in the chat box for you. We really do value your feedback, and we use it as we continue to design more programs. So any suggestions you have on what you'd like to see or how we could do this better, we are open and very appreciative. And then lastly, as I've mentioned, there's a whole lot of resources for you to continue working on this. We've got the shared resource folder, the contact sheet that you'll be getting, our Slack channel, the website, and then links to the next 2 workshops. All of this is here to help you make stronger solution ideas and so that you can submit really great applications before the deadline of Sunday, November 1st. Again, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Alessandra. Let us know how we can help you continue to develop ideas with impact around the 7 dimensions of well-being.